Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Alvin Wang Graylin. He is a fantastic US speaker whose voice carries weight at Stanford University, at MIT University, and this is Alvin Wang Graylin. Please come here.
Hello. Good to see you. Good to see you again.
Alvin is an entrepreneur. Oh yeah, he's a tech guy, and he lives more or less on the stages of the world. We first met each other at the South by South in Austin, and where you promoted your book, a fantastic book, a bestseller. And Alvin shows how AI can radically transform productivity, energy, healthcare, and education. And his very bold prediction is scarcity will turn into abundance.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's abundance. That means fruits. You get some fruits from everywhere. You get ananas, you get pie, you live there, and it's paradise, more or less, yeah?
If we make the right choices in the next 5 years.
That's it. At the same time, he raises a crucial question. How do we seize the opportunities without sliding into job shocks, misinformation, and an AI arms race? And so, ladies and gentlemen, get ready, fasten your seatbelts. The stage is yours, Alvin, and yeah.
Thank you, Jans.
Yeah, thank you.
I look forward to chatting with you. Okay, we'll talk a little later.
Yeah, we'll talk later. Thank you.
Let's see. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what happens after AGI. Right? I don't know how many people know what AGI is, artificial general intelligence. It is essentially what every single lab in the world right now is trying to create. But before I talk about that, I want to tell you a little story about this thing. This is a trilobite fossil. About 500 million years ago, this was the first animal in the world that got sight. They got eyes. In a world of blind animals, it got eyes and it became the apex animal. In that way, every single ocean was ruled by this animal for about 250 million years. We have been on this planet for about 300,000 years. So we're far behind this. But about 250 million years ago, this animal, this trilobite, disappeared because it could not adapt to change. Okay? And we are about to create something that for us will be the level of change that made this animal extinct, but we are creating it, and we get to control how it happened. It was a casualty of events that happened that it cannot control, but we can. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that the future that's coming is going to be drastic, but we can do a lot to affect how that future comes. Now, can we adapt? Can we adapt as a society, as a species, to what is coming? That's really the question. And I hope by the end of this, you'll realize and agree with me that we can. And the future that Jens talked about, the abundant, utopian future, is something that's in our reach. But at the same time, a very dark future can also be in the future. In fact, that darker, more dystopian future is the more likely future today, because everything that we have done that made us successful in the last 10,000 years has been the reason why we've made the progress and success we have as a species and as a society. But those skills and those habits and mindsets are the exact reason why we may not be properly utilizing what we are creating now with AI and AGI. So this is the future a lot of people think about. Okay, well, in another 50 years, everybody will be fat and will be lazy and food will just come to us. And that's one possible future that people talk about. There's another possible future that people are more afraid of, which is the Terminator future. Robots going to come destroy us all. These are the two futures you hear about in movies. But these are actually not the likely futures. I will tell you a little bit more about what I think could happen and how do we avoid either of these or the ones that we talked about. So between about 250,000 years ago to about 10,000 years ago, we lived in a relatively abundant society in the sense of there was only about 5 to 10 million humans on the entire planet, and we had access to all those resources. We moved around with the food. We worked maybe 2-3 hours a day to survive. And the rest of the time, we painted, we danced, we spent time with family. We had relatively simple lives. We were in balance with nature. Okay? We ate and we hunted what we needed, and we went with the seasons. But over the last 10,000 years, we've gone from 5 to 10 million people to 8 billion people. Okay? We've gone 1,000x in terms of our strain on this planet. And because of that, we've also created a hierarchy. We've created a scarcity that we've adapted to. So the hoarding of money, the hoarding of power, the hoarding of resources is something that we have trained ourselves to do, because when you have that many people in a concentrated place, we feel lack. But what I want people to realize is actually, even today, even with 8 billion people, we actually have enough. But we don't realize it. Now, over the last 30,000 years, we've gone through multiple socioeconomic cycles. Everything from hunter-gatherer to pastoral to agricultural to commercial to industrial, and now digital. And the next phase is the post-AGI abundantness type of a society. And at each phase, our productivity per capita has been going up exponentially. We've actually gone up about 10,000x over the last 10,000 years in terms of how much we create per person. And at each one of these periods, we've had a different scarce resource. Before, it was just time. We had plenty of food and land and everything. We just didn't have time. And then it was livestock, and then it was labor and land. And then it was transportation and the machines and energy and money. And now we are about to enter an age where the only thing that will be scarce will be time again. Back to where we were 10, 20,000 years ago. And at each one of these periods, we've had different ways of managing our society. We were very egalitarian before, right? There was really no hierarchy in the tribes that we were in, 20, 30, 50 people. Everybody worked in the same jobs, lived in the same huts or caves, and really there was no status. Then we had land, and we started to create agriculture, and we had slave society feudalism, and then capitalism, which then took it to another level of progress. And then socialism and state capitalism was a response to capitalism because people felt oppressed by capitalism. Now, we have a chance now to get to a new phase, what I call abundantism, is a way of thinking that takes us a little bit more back to where we are. And we are at this point where we are in the crossroads of where we are in technology and in where we are in our social and economic system to a new path. People will say, oh, there's no way you can go back to a way of thinking, of being egalitarian, because that's not in our nature. The reality is that 95% of the history of our species, we lived in an egalitarian world. All of those white places were when we as a society operated egalitarianly. Only in the last 10,000 years have that changed, and only in the last few hundred years has the drive for wealth and power has been so extreme. So in the past, we've had essentially different types of metrics in terms of how we're measuring things, in terms of how do we see the resource condition. Do we have a scarcity mindset, or do we have a post-scarcity mindset? Do we see human value as just being labor and production, or do we see the dignity and service as really how we measure value? And the current systems of capitalism and socialism essentially still makes us think we are in a world of scarcity. There are now ways of thinking in terms of the Web3 and accelerationism that thinks we can get to post-scarcity, but it's still about post-scarcity with humans being a production system. There are other thinking that says, oh, we live in a scarce world and these AI systems are going to kill us all, we need to stop. And then ones that say we need to stop because we are over-encroaching on the resources of this planet. I actually like to think that we have the opportunity to be able to get to both. We have an opportunity where we will get into a post-scarcity world. At the same time, we will need to revalue how do we decide what is valuable in this new system. And rather than thinking money and production as a sole source of value of humans, is that our service and our dignity and our being is actually going to be the reason that we have innate value, not because of how many widgets we made or how many hours we were in the office. So Nikola Tesla said something about 100 years ago that was quite interesting. He said, "Science is but a perversion of itself unless it has as its ultimate goal the betterment of humanity." Unfortunately, most people in government and technology today have lost that thought. And they are using technology as a way to gain and hoard power rather than a way to share goodness to the world and help better humanity. Let me give you a quick rundown of the different types of AI, because not all AI is the same. Most people have heard of generative AI because the last few years, that's been the big hot term. But in itself, generative AI is actually just a small portion of what's called artificial narrow intelligence. It's generating pictures or poetry or whatever, movies out of prompts. But it's been around for 50, 60 plus years we've had AI. So GOF AI is good old-fashioned AI. That's kind of the coding. You put the rules of experts into a system. And what people call artificial narrow intelligence is specific to a vertical industry. Agentic AI is where we are at right now, where people are taking these specific narrow industries and then giving it a task and allowing the AI to, again, figure out how to solve a task. We are getting to a point where we are going to achieve soon sovereign AI, which is every country's own AI that takes into their culture and their priorities into account. And then lastly, we will get to AGI, and then soon after ASI, AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, and ASI, Artificial Superintelligence. What I will show you is kind of how, a lot of people don't believe we're actually going to get there, but I will tell you that we are actually on our way there, and we are going to get there much faster than most people believe. If you look at over the last 5 years, every single benchmark of success and intelligence for these technologies, we've been going up faster and faster to get to the end of the benchmark. For most of these, about 80% levels where human capabilities are. And these AIs have exceeded most humans in most type of tasks. And it is actually getting faster in terms of how quickly we solve them. The reason that they are flattening out is not because the AI is not getting smarter. The reason they're flattening out is because the tests are not smart enough to see the capabilities of what they can do. If you look at, this is an IQ map. A year ago, every single AI was actually below 100 IQ. Now, just a few weeks ago, the latest AI is now at 148 IQ on the IQ test. That's 3 standard deviations away from norm. That's 99.8% of, smarter than 99.8% of all humans on this planet. And that's today. And in 6 months, it'll probably be at 160. Another 6 months, it'll probably be at 200. Okay? So I want you to understand the speed of progress of what's happening. And what's creating this progress is something called the scaling laws that the AI industry has been talking about. And those scaling laws have, over the last 10, 15 years, been based on 3 major facts. One is, if I make the systems bigger, if I put more compute to process it, and I give it more data, it gets smarter and smarter. And it's a logarithmic scale, so I give it 10 times the data, it'll get twice as smart, something in that order of range. Over the last 2-3 years, there's been now new ways of scaling in terms of training better techniques and algorithms, inference-based compute, which is running it in time, and the longer you run it, that's the smarter it gets, or distilling it and quantizing it, which makes the system smaller so they can run on devices in your pocket or maybe on your glasses. And in the last 6 months, the biggest breakthrough is actually the ability for AI to start using tools. Something called MCP, Model Context Protocol, allows pretty much every single digital tool and soon physical tool to be accessible by these AI so that they can do all the levels of precision that we do in our profession. Oh, actually, I do want to mention one quick thing is, in the past, it's been logarithmic scaling, but we are now going to be relying on exponential scaling with algorithms, linear scaling, and then also exponential scaling with tools. And in the future, the three that I point to actually I think are going to be the main sources of progress, not increasing compute and not increasing parameter size. In fact, the parameter size of these models are starting to get smaller as they get smarter. And not just are we getting smarter in terms of the intelligence in the brain, we're actually getting more capable in terms of physical AI, what people call physical AI, which is putting AI into robots. And so very soon, all the jobs that we do, whether physical jobs will be replaced by these robots, and the mental cognitive jobs are going to be replaced by AI. This is what's called a dark factory. In China, there are multiple factories like this where you just put parts in, and the robots is working in a dark factory that there's no humans, and they actually get work done. Okay. So what is AGI? I'll give you a quick definition of AGI, which is an AI that is smart enough to learn and pretty much do all the tasks of an average human. Right? That's kind of the general agreed in the industry of what it means. And ASI is an AI that's intelligent, more intelligent than the entire species put together. Is it possible? According to these lab heads, it's anywhere between this year and 2030 when this becomes a reality. So in the next 5 years, AGI will come. And when that happens, our entire basis of our economy and our society changes because our entire economy is based on labor, right? And if human labor is no longer the source of value in the system, how does that change? So when AGI comes, there's a lot of positive things, because you hear a lot of negative news about this, right? It will actually help increase our understanding. It's already helping solve new science for us, finding new drugs for us, finding new materials. It will make us more productive so that we can work less and have more time to do the things that we care about. And it will solve some of the major societal issues, whether climate issues or energy issues, that we've been struggling with for hundreds of years. And of course, it will also make us healthier, and maybe it might help us in terms of increasing aging. So this brings on an age of abundance. All the things that we talk about in sci-fi. But sci-fi, as you know, is a lot of negative issues. There's always dystopia sci-fi. And when we talk about losing our jobs, people feel very afraid because our occupation is what we identify ourselves with. It's how do we set our status? It's what's your title? What do you do? But what is occupation? If you look at the term occupation, it comes from the Latin word occupatio, which is to occupy. What are we occupying? Time. All we're doing is we're trading time for money. That's what occupation is. I would actually rather introduce a new term for us, vocation. Vocation is something that most people today look on as something negative, something low, blue-collar work. Vocation, actually, the term comes from vocation, which is to be called. It's your calling. It's actually what makes you happy, what you're meant to do. And it's actually what we should be spending our time thinking about rather than trading time for money, is to spend time doing the things that we love. So both my parents are artists, and I value what artists think. And Picasso said something that was very meaningful to me. He said, the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. He didn't say the purpose of life is to sell it for as much money as you can, which is what a lot of people think today, right? And if we take that mindset to what's happening and what we will soon be doing, is that we will all be finding what our gift is and doing that versus finding who pays us the most to spend our time. So, of course, there's also risk. There's also downsides to AI, of course, we just talked about. There's going to be job displacement. No matter how smart you think you are or how indispensable you are, AI in some way is going to take away some of that value. And for a lot of people, that will create significant mental health issues, and it will create social stability issues. There's also the problem of bad actors. When you give new capabilities to bad actors, the first people to use it are these people who think I can use it to bring some personal gain to myself or whatever my philosophy on life is. And they will attack our internet systems, our financial systems, our telecom systems, create manipulation over people, as well as creating harm to the world. And of course, governments themselves are actually going to misuse this technology. We are already militarizing AI. And that's only going to create escalation and tension between countries. The thing that I'm actually least worried about is the one that most AI safety experts are worried about, which is the alignment risk. Will AI align to our values, and how is that going to change the world? Are we going to turn us into gray goop or paper clips? I will have to say that if you look at the analysis, the misuse risk is much, much larger than the alignment risk. So the three futures, rather than the Terminator or Wall-E future, the three futures I think are much more possible are the future of the Mad Max future. We escalate our conflict into a future post-war apocalypse. We create an Elysium future, which is a ultra-stratified of a few trillionaires and then the rest of the people who are serfs. And these two are based on the idea that if you maintain your idea of scarcity and the hoarding of power, we will misuse this technology to create these two futures. If we start to think abundantly and allow technology to be shared to all the people of the world, all the countries of the world, we will create a more Star Trek utopian future where we're focused on discovery versus focused on trying to gain status and power. And people will tell you, oh, that's not possible. But I will give you a little story that might help you understand why it is possible, and it's actually not our nature to be selfish. So I'll tell you a tale of two monkeys, actually two primates. There is the Bob the bonobo and Charlie the chimpanzee. They look very similar. They're actually genetically they were our closest ancestors. We separated from them 6 million years ago. They separated from each other about 2 million years ago. But they will grow up in very different lives. The chimpanzee is actually a alpha male dominated society, quite violent. They have wars between their tribes. And the bonobos have what's called communities, and it's led by a female. They don't have fights, they don't kill each other, and when they have conflict, they solve it with sex. So why are they so different? Their gene is only 0.1% different. We're about 1% difference from them, and they're about 1.1% different from each other. Does anybody know why they're so different? The reason is 2 million years ago, the Congo River formed and it separated these two groups of animals that came from the same place. South of the river is a very abundant place, a lush area. North of it is a little bit more arid, more seasonal. So there's scarcity to the north of the river, south of the river, there's not. And they adapted to that environment. So this is the environmental vegetation lushness chart. You can see pretty much all the areas where the bonobos lived were lush areas. And what I want to say from that is that when we soon will achieve a world of abundance in terms of material goods, hopefully our mindset can also adapt as these primates have adapted. So how many Star Trek fans here? Okay, good. I like that. Anybody know what this moment is? Exactly. First contact. Why is that significant? Because first contact was when the Vulcans landed on Earth, brought advanced technology from a rational species to then help us get to a world of abundance. The difference is that's fiction, right? We are now creating our own Vulcan in the form of an AI. In the form of an AI that will now bring us abundance, and it's a rational species that can help us become smarter versions and better versions of ourselves. So how do we get there? We need to educate the public on the risks and benefits. We need to make sure that we have an international regulatory body that is focused on safety so that we can get the most out of technology. We need to create detection and countermeasures so that the bad actors can't do the harm that they want to do. And we need to separate civilian from national security issues so that governments will want to work together. We have to retrain the workforce so that they have new goals in life, and we need to provide a global universal basic income and infrastructure system so that they're taken care of, so that we have a social safety net. And we need to accelerate a metaverse infrastructure so people around the world have an ulterior plane of existence and a plane of outlet for their energies so that they don't feel lack of purpose. And we need to collaborate on a global effort to create AGI so that it takes all of our perspectives, all of our cultures into consideration. And we need to make sure that AI is actually put into the governance system so that we create much more objective and reason in terms of how we're making decisions versus today that the selfish means that most decisions are made. I want to give you a little final story, which is the story of three animals on a race. We have the the tortoise, the European tortoise, creating a lot of safety nets and regulation that is making them safe. They're a little bit behind. We have the Chinese with their little hang glider infrastructure that helps them move faster. And then we have the untethered rabbit of the Americans who is moving as fast as possible to get to the goal of AGI. This looks like the Americans are going to win. But what they don't realize is that when you get to AGI, it is not a finish line. It actually is a disruption to our society. And when that happens, and America is going to get there first, maybe in creating AGI or AI that completely disrupts their society, but it will not be able to adapt to it. Just like in business, it's not the first to invent that succeeds. It is the first to diffuse it and deploy a technology into a widespread scale that succeeds. And so this will actually make you feel, oh, we're actually doing pretty well. We're going, we're safe. We're going to be fine. And the reason actually I feel like AI is the winner in AI will not be the one who invents it first is because right now open source AI and closed source AI is maybe 1 or 2 months apart in terms of capabilities. So anything that gets invented within 2 months is going to be available to everyone. Right? So the key is, can your society adapt to actually having it deployed? What happens when 10, 20, 30, 50% of your workforce is displaced in a very short time? Now, you'll actually think, okay, I actually don't feel so bad. The Americans are the ones in trouble. But what's not shown is that between all of these three animals, there is an invisible chain that is tying all of us together. That when one major market or country fails, it will drag the entire market down with it. So we need to either win together or lose together, okay? So the future is in our hands. If you are an AI lab, I urge you to focus on safety instead of speed. If you are a content provider, focus on creating content that's meaningful rather than manipulating. If you're a corporate leader, create good versus greed. And decisions for policymakers should be focused on helping the people, not gaining power. And if you are a government leader, find ways to cooperate instead of compete with other countries. And even on an individual basis, we need to focus on substance versus creating status for yourself. At the end of the day, this is all about long-term thinking versus short-term thinking. Whether AI comes 2 years from now or 5 years from now or 15 years from now, it doesn't matter. But it does matter if we can adapt when it comes, because when that change happens and it moves us into a certain path, we won't be able to come out of it. So last week, I spent an entire week in the middle of a desert in a place of lack, in a place where there was no food, no energy, and no water. And I saw a world where those 80,000 people at Burning Man helped each other. They just gave to each other without consideration, without expectations. And it showed me that even in the place of lack, the sense of abundance is possible. And if it's possible there, it should be very, very possible in the world that we are about to enter. So, thank you. And I want to leave you with a last quote, which is from Jim Lovell. He's an Apollo astronaut. And he said, "You don't go to heaven when you die. You go to heaven when you're born." And I want you to appreciate how beautiful is the world that we live in. And we need to protect that world, not some science fiction world that we're going into. So thank you very much.